Hello and welcome to our webinar series, Research Clues to Appreciating a New Era of Cannabinoid Conundrums. Our first webinar of the series is Labeling with Love or Lethal Consequences for CBD-containing products. Our presenter today is Dr. Lawrance Mullen, Program Manager for the Laboratory Quality Assurance Program in the Center for Forensic Science Application and Advancement at RTI International. Without further delay, here is Dr. Mullen.
All right. Hello and welcome to Labeling with Love or Lethal Consequences. As indicated, my name is Dr. Lawrence Mullen and I am affiliated with RTI International. So the objectives for this presentation are as follows. We plan for attendees to recognize the implications of the Agricultural Improvement Act, also known as the Farm Bill, on drug testing and technological advances. We plan to discuss the effects of an acidic environment present in foods or beverages on THC-free CBD and its potential to convert to THC. And lastly, we plan to describe the potential of CBD-based products to interfere with drug tests, court-ordered workplace DUID urine tests. It's just a brief disclaimer. These are my own opinions, findings, and conclusions and/or recommendations. Anything expressed in this particular webinar are those of me and do not necessarily reflect those of the Department of Justice. Okay, so let's get to it. The Agricultural Improvement Act of 2018, also known as the Farm Bill, caused a lot of changes to the way that we interpret and use hemp products and just the way that we cultivate hemp. So under the Rural Health and Safety Education Program grants directed by the USDA, prioritization for treatment projects aimed at substance abuse disorder were established. The facilitation of commercialized cultivation of hemp or the marketing of hemp was also impacted. Hemp with low levels of the psychoactive ingredient marijuana were excluded from the statutory definition of marijuana. And lastly, the law created a new hemp program under the USDA oversight and makes hemp an eligible crop under the federal crop insurance program. So that last one is very important because as we go throughout this presentation, we will see that though these primary changes from the hemp are these things that have been highlighted from the Agricultural Improvement Act, also known as the Farm Bill, will cause a lot of interesting changes and challenges as we relate for research. So next we look at hemp versus CBD versus THC. So any portion of the cannabis sativa plant with no more than 0.3% of delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol is classified as hemp. It's important to note that cannabidiol, also known as CBD, is found in all cannabis plants. THC is the major psychoactive component in cannabis and is classified as a Schedule I substance under the Controlled Substance Act. So again, very important to note that CBD is found in all cannabis plants, but is derived from what is federally defined as marijuana, and it should not contain more than 0.3% THC dry weight. So in this particular slide, we look at the functionality of hemp. And if you can look at the infographic to the right-hand side, you can see that the uses of hemp are limitless almost. So you have stalk. So stalk can be used for fiber. It can be used for herds. That fiber can be used for textile, rope creation. Herds can be developed for paper, organic compost, even animal bedding for laboratory settings and any other animal situation or shelter. Seed, hemp seed can be developed into oil, seed cake, and hemp nut. So that oil can be used for cooking, dietary supplements, body care products, flour, beer, bakery items, granola, protein powder. Then even the leaves and the roots also can have some beneficial usages as well, including medicine, organic compost, leaves, flowers. All these particular things are all grouped into the usage of the hemp plant. So again, cultivation of hemp is something that is age old, going back to even George Washington. So in this slide, we see the chemical structures of delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, THC, and cannabidiol, CBD. Key differences between the two chemicals is a cyclic ring on the THC structure and a hydroxyl group on the CBD structure. The two share the same molecular formula containing 21 atoms of carbon, so carbon 21, 30 of hydrogen, so H30, and 2 of oxygen. The molecular masses are practically identical, with THC and CBD having masses of 314.469 grams per mole and 314.464 grams per mole, respectively. So CBD at a glance. It's important to note that CBD was first isolated from cannabis in 1940, and the structure was reported in 1963. It was overshadowed by the scientific relevance of THC in 1964 for its psychoactive principles or properties. CBD is speculated to block both the CB1 and CB2 receptors, which are expressed predominantly in the brain and the immune system within the endocannabinoid system. And it's important to note that both Hudson and Cherkosova et al. Suggest that CBD works as a negative allosteric modulator at CB1 and CB2 receptors and can counteract some of the negative side effects of THC. So that's important to note as we see all of the literature and reference material that you may, go about and see on the internet, where you see all these speculations that CBD has all of these different properties. And we'll kind of go into that in the next slide. But noting that some of the scientific advantages of CBD are present, but they are still being researched and investigated. CBD is everywhere. So CBD popularity is kind of predicated on its marketability as a panacea, just basically a catch-all or a remedy for all health issues. So we see a lot of media that indicates that CBD is non-psychoactive, it's calming, it's relaxing, it supports well-being, it's a wellness additive. If you go to any wellness shop or anything like that, or even your local supermarket, if you have a Wegmans or Whole Foods, if you go to any of those particular stores, you may see CBD products right there on the shelf being marketed as these catch-alls or these remedies or these catch-alls for any particular diseases or distress. And as I stated in that previous slide, some of those things may in fact be true. However, it's important to note that public safety is always a concern. And if there is any potential for it to cause any kind of illicit behavior, that needs to be fully vetted before being released to the public. So important to note that CBD is speculated to work as the following: an anxiolytic, an anticonvulsant, an antipsychotic, neuroprotectant, and it also has some research that is associated with it that says that it has impact on inflammatory bowel disease, which we will see in the next slide. Clinical relevance of CBD as it relates to irritable bowel syndrome. So if we kind of revisit what irritable bowel syndrome is, or IBS, it's a disorder that affects the gastrointestinal tract and can cause gastric issues. It also can cause abdominal pain and cramps. CBD is used in clinical studies all the time. So as we go further into the presentation, we will talk about some of those other advances that CBD has caused in way of clinical studies. But I thought this one was particularly interesting because this is a little bit newer and it's still kind of being fully researched. So in 2020, in a study performed by Praganatelli, it was indicated that GPR55, which is a potential cannabinoid receptor, again in the endocannabinoid system, may affect gut motility, and that its inhibition reduced motility in mice models, and that CBD reverses the effect. So basically saying that the counteractivity of CBD in that particular model could potentially reverse some of the motility issues that may be present within IBS. So, and here we see just a quick diagram of how irritable bowel syndrome actually impacts both the small and large intestines. Then we took a quick CBD timeline. So as I stated, there's been a lot of usage or a lot of implication that CBD has a lot of relevant benefits. And these are just quick snapshots. I'm sure there are more detailed events. However, just a quick snapshot includes media coverage of benefits of CBD for seizures or epilepsies in adolescents. These were primarily noted for children with Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, also called LGS. In 2014, the Rohrabacher-Farr Amendment became law. So this doesn't necessarily pertain exclusively to CBD. This particular amendment was interesting to note because it basically kind of changed or reshaped the implementation of medical cannabis at the state level. And it was the first time that any side of Congress voted to protect medical cannabis users. So it kind of indicated a shift in the way that legislation viewed cannabis, which almost is thought of as an opening door of sorts for the usage of cannabis in society. So next up in 2017, we have the development of Epidiolex, which is a drug that is primarily cannabidiol. So this drug was submitted as a new drug application based on 3 clinical studies that examined the treatment of Dravet and LGS. In 2018, we note that Epidiolex is officially approved, and that's kind of monumental because it was actually before the release of the Agricultural Improvement Act, also known as the Farm Bill, in 2018. So again, Epidiolex is pretty monumental as it relates to treatment for LGS and epilepsy. So we see the promising health benefits there. And I think that basically coupled along with the Agricultural Improvement Act, the Farm Bill, basically created a very interesting storm. And we'll kind of look at that as we continue on with the slides. All right. Proliferation of CBD products. So once we had, the Farm Bill to kind of reshape and reauthorize the way that we utilize hemp, as well as the classification of THC or the presence of, that less than 0.3% THC, dry weight THC in a product, it basically caused the proliferation of CBD products. So we have CBD infused products everywhere. So what is the impact to the public is a really big question here. So first I want to kind of take you on a path. So we look at cannabis labeling mishaps. In 2015, we had states that were able to solicit medical marijuana examined. And we basically look at a study by Ryan Vandry in 2015, where they explore or view 75 products which were purchased from an internet directory of dispensaries and evaluated for their accuracy of cannabinoid infused products. And the study was very interesting. So the study yielded the following. So only 17% were labeled correctly, 23% were underlabeled, and 60% were overlabeled. So that means that over 50% of the products evaluated failed to meet the accuracy standards and contain less than the indicated amount of cannabinoid content. Other products contained over the allotted amount of cannabinoid and basically inadvertently placed the public at risk to experience adverse effects. So in layman's terms, there was probably too much THC, too less THC than that was actually advertised and was not actually providing whatever benefit or actual speculated product usage was present on that particular package, or it was just incorrect. That moves us into CBD labeling mishaps. So the first look is topicals. So again, the lack of regulatory oversight by the federal government to verify the accuracy of labeling information for CBD products is happening at an increasing rate. So in a study conducted by Spindle et al. In 2022, 105 topical CBD products were purchased in person and online, and the cannabinoid content was again evaluated. The topical study resulted in the following. 18% were overlabeled with less than 10% CBD advertised. 58% were underlabeled with less than 10% more CBD than advertised. 24% were accurately labeled. So, a quarter of it was actually labeled correct out of 105 products. And then THC was detected in 35% of products, all containing less than 0.3% THC, which is the legal limit. So it's not necessarily a matter of, intense or paramount exposure to THC. It's just more so that the oversight is not actually indicated, one, in the labeling and just the regulatory aspect of CBD ingestion. So that's the problem. It's the unconscious or the inadvertent exposure to a THC that may be an issue. And we'll look a little bit further at that as we go along in the presentation. Products often made therapeutic or cosmetic claims. So again, these products are products that are out on the shelves in, marketable areas. And they, again, are marketing themselves as panaceas, just remedies for all issues. So if you have any health issue, any skin issue, please use CBD products or CBD infused products. So it's important to note that, as we continue about this can be a public safety matter, or a public safety issue, rather. So next up, we look at CBD labeling mishaps as it relates to foods and beverages. So 47 products were purchased and analyzed for their cannabinoid content. Items included beverages such as condiments, chocolates, gummies, and snacks. Prices ranged anywhere from $2.40 for a single item up to about $78 for a 12-pack of something like kombucha. 29 of 47, which is around about 61% of the products, included a reference to the Food and Drug Administration, also known as the FDA, having not evaluated the product or its claims or similar warning, while about 18 of 47, which is about 38%, made no mention of the FDA at all. So product labeling for CBD content was inconsistent and stated that the range of total CBD for all 47 products was anywhere from 10 to 500 milligrams per containing or serving. However, after performing an analytical test of CBD, the range was more in the area of 0 to 3,700 milligrams per container or serving. So the range was definitely widened, and the labeling really resulted in a lot of inaccuracy. So here are some of the results from that food and beverage study that was performed. So 9 contained the claimed CBD amount, whereas 13, about 27% of the products contain CBD, but with greater than 10% variance above the product label. 18 products contain CBD, but with 10% variance below the label. And then about 7 products, no CBD was detected, which was actually should have been correct in the sense that some of the products were made from hemp seed and were not intended to contain CBD at all anyway. So as you can see, these numbers or these percentages really represent a conundrum as it relates to labeling and the appearance of such. All right, so we're going to shift gears here a little bit and start to talk about acid. So this is really kind of talking about adding acid to the mix. So technological changes that occurred primarily to adding acid into the mix. We're just going to look at a series of studies that have had to combat the addition of acid and its impact on CBD primarily. So acidic environments and CBD studies. So in 2016, an in vitro study was conducted by Merritt et al. It was suggested that when CBD is exposed to any type of acidic environment, primarily in the stomach with gastric fluid, it could potentially cyclicize to THC and other psychoactive cannabinoids, which include delta-9 and delta-8. It's important to note that the results of the study, although they did report isomerization of CBD to THC, This was only present with the addition of sodium dodecyl sulfate, also called SDS, which is a surfactant, which is almost like soap. So not as much of a concern of CBD converting to THC when exposed to gastric acid within your intestines. So I don't think there's a concern where you have to really limit your exposure to CBD and concern of it converting to THC while in your intestine. But it is important to note that acid will have the impact on CBD to potentially cause isomerization. So that leads us to a series of other studies, including a 2020 study conducted by Marzullo et al. That basically looked at acid catalyzed cyclization of CBD using protic acids. And so with these protic acids, that included things like citric acid, acetic acid, phosphoric acid, and there was not huge amounts of conversion that was witnessed with that particular study, but there was some conversion. So it kind of leads to a path of trying to figure out what the impact of acid will be as it relates to CBD and any other cannabinoid for that matter. So again, like studies like this, like the preliminary studies and just kind of looking at label accuracy, these all end up being driving factors for exploration into the effect of acid on CBD. And we'll look at that more in the coming slides. So acidic derivatization. So in a study conducted by Andrews and Patterson in 2012, it was identified that identical retention times and mass spectra for THC and CBD were obtained when derivatizing with trifluoroacetic anhydride, also called TFAA, with 1,1,1,3,3,3 hexafluoroisopropanol, also called HFIP. So the use of perfluorinated anhydrides coupled with perfluoroalcohols for the derivatization of cannabinoids is something that's well documented in literature, as well as utilized in multiple labs across the country. And negative chemical ionization, also called NCI mode, acylation of hydroxyl groups with perfluorinated anhydrides such as trifluoroacetic anhydride, also again the TFA, and esterification of carboxylic acids with perfluoroalcohols such as HFIP is often employed. This combination of derivatization reagents is used to maximize the sensitivity and selectivity for the analysis of THC-COOH. So again, derivatization is used in the detection of cannabinoids using gas chromatography, mass spectrometry, also called GCMS, with both electron impact ionization, EI, and then the NCI. With these structures, we see that with the derivatization of TFAA and HFIP, it does result in very similar characteristics for the compounds of Delta 9 as well as CBD, which represents their isomerization under the acidic conditions. So next up, we look at analytical challenges. So analytical challenges as supported by the operators of the National Laboratory Certification Program, the NLCP, conducted a study by Hart et al. That examined the urinary metabolite of CBD 7-carboxy cannabidiol in urine to determine the effect of drug testing of 11-nor-9-carboxy tetrahydrocannabinol. So in this particular study, a set of performance test samples containing 7-carboxy CBD for cannabinoid testing was given to laboratories that are accredited by the NLCP to investigate if CBD 7-carboxy cannabidiol could cause false positive results for THC during the immunological screening or the screening test. The conclusion resulted in false positive risk being low if laboratories avoided usage of strongly acidic conditions during the sample preparation. So again, just to note that the adding acid to the mix definitely causes a lot of isomerization and other issues with CBD. So the technological advancement in this particular example is to, one, move away from using acids when you're working with these particular compounds. Also to, just look for different types of derivatives to use, or switching to LCMS, MS, which is liquid chromatography mass spectrometry. But there still lies challenges with that particular switch that also could still lead to inadvertent or unintentional isomerization of CBD. So next up, we move to a study that focused in on cannabidiol in acidic foods. So it's really interesting with this particular study. So with all of the mention of acidic conditions and analytical challenges, and then the technological advances that we had to make, another study was conducted where 47 products, including beverages, condiments, which chocolates, gummies, all these particular types of snacks were analyzed. 29 of the 47 of those particular products referenced the FDA having not evaluated the product or its claims or similar warning, whereas 18 of the 47 made no mention of the FDA. So very similar circumstances that we saw with the topicals, as well as some of the earlier cannabis studies. So this issue is, again, something that's untested. So like in this particular study, we were looking to see if CBD could isomerize to THC in acidic foods. So we have foods that may be sitting on the shelves that may have pHs that are lower than 4, which may produce a perfect storm, no pun intended, to potentially cause the isomerization of CBD to THC. So again, the National Laboratory Certification Program conducted an applied study in which we investigated that potential for CBD isomerization. So the isomerization could lead to an unknowing ingestion of THC, which could potentially cause a positive cannabinoids drug test in the event that someone is ingesting a large amount of these products unknowingly. The acids that we looked at in the study included phosphoric acid, citric acid, and acetic acid. So the products that we looked at were cola, lemonade and sports drink, hot sauce, and ketchup and mustard. So in this study, 3 acidic beverages and 3 condiments were fortified with a THC-free CBD component and monitored for the formation of THC over 120 days. So the CBD levels ranged, but I think the more important aspect of this would probably be the CBD conversion to THC in the acidic foods. So at a span of 45, 90, and 15 months, we saw that the items that contain citric acid actually yielded the highest conversion or isomerization rate for CBD to THC. So, for example, our high-level lemonade saw a maximum production of CBD to THC at 3.86%. And the way that we did this was that we use reference amounts for so you see here where it says lemonade number 1 and lemonade number 2, sports drink number 1, sports drink number 2, as well as for the other items. And I just highlighted the ones that actually saw the biggest yield of CBD to THC isomerization. But what we did was we spiked each one of the concentrations at low and high concentrations. So your lemonade number 1, for example, would have a lower concentration of 20 milligrams of CBD, whereas your lemonade number 2 would have 80 milligrams of CBD. So we basically just multiplied it by 4. And that's how we got our high and low concentrations for the CBD content. And so, again, as we look through this, you can see that gradually we see a pretty consistent yield of CBD to THC isomerization. It's important to note that although we did start with a THC-free CBD reference material, we did actually convert to THC. Now, the levels here vary. It may not be able to actually produce a positive drug test, a positive urine drug test at that. However, it's important to note that we did actually get the development of THC, or the isomerization from CBD to THC. So CBD testing showed good homogeneity, but recovery versus target amounts were variable. Delta-9 THC detected in all products, however, only lemonade and the sports drink produced significant amounts per serving. Delta-8 was not detected in any of the products. The conversion of CBD to THC at 120 days was about 1 to 2% versus the weighted amounts in CBD. Tests of lemonade and sport drink preparations at 15 months showed continued increases at the concentration of THC. Only traces of CBN were detected, and then the conversion of CBD to THC was about 3 to 6%. So in conclusion, the Agricultural Improvement Act, or the Farm Bill, it did all of these things by removing certain hemp-derived products from the CSA list. And then that act again led to the proliferation of CBD-based products. And it's still a buyer's beware market, because with the labeling inaccuracies and then the acidic derivatizations and the acidic environments leading to unintentional THC formation, there's still a lot for us to learn and evaluate as it relates to this particular compound. So just watch out. So that brings me to an end of my presentation. I look forward to addressing and entertaining any particular questions as it relates to this presentation, and I hope you enjoyed listening.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Ruth Winokur, a principal scientist with the Center for Forensic Science Advancement and Application at RTI International. Thank you, Dr. Mullen, for providing such an informative presentation. We will now begin the Q&A session. So, in the study of CBD conversion to THC in acidic foods, is that published or is that soon to be published?
It is soon to be published. So that particular study is fully completed, and we are currently finishing up the manuscript on that one.
Great. Also, in the CBD study for acidic foods, what form of CBD was used to spike the foods and beverages?
So we used a nano-formulated, nano-emulsified form of THC-free CBD. So we actually found it at a small health store where it indicated it was THC-free. It's formulated by using nano emulsion technology, which basically means that they take the CBD oil and basically kind of like spin it around until it gets very, very small, like by molecular weight. And it basically turns into like an additive, something that you can kind of pour into. So it made the process a lot easier to basically mix and infuse the different products with this particular product, which worked fairly well. So, I mean, I think that's generally how they formulate a lot of the products now, with something similar, with like nano-formulated CBD.
Thanks.
Sure.
Dr. Mullen, there was a question about the topical study results, about one of the slides. I went back and looked at that slide. Do you want me to handle the answer to that one?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm gonna answer that one since I had a chance to go back and look at it. The slide is correct. So the question is, in regards of the topical study results, did you need to put less than 10% or less? Yeah, less than 10%. So in the topical study, they grouped the products into those that were labeled correctly and those that were over-labeled, which means they claimed to contain more CBD than what we detected, and those that were under-labeled. So those that claimed to have lower CBD than what we detected, and we just used 10% as the dividing line. So that's all that was regards to.
Thank you.
Oops. I lost the Q&A pod. Okay, here we go. Any insight or speculation on why certain products cause more isomerization than others?
I mean, we have a couple of theories as it relates to that. I mean, it may be the type of acid potentially, or it could be some of the potential additional ingredients that may be present. I think the primary reason may be the type of acid, but it's still something that we're just kind of finalizing in way of the manuscript, but probably signs will point to the type of acid, maybe.
Okay, and then the next question, of course, of just following along this whole line of thought about acid and CBD and what can happen. Would these foods cause the conversion when ingested in combination with CBD?
That's a really good question. I think, I mean, potentially, I don't think it necessarily would.
Yeah,
I think that the type of, the conversion that was going to occur would probably happen predominantly in the food. And I don't think like it being ingested would add on to more conversion or more isomerization from CBD to THC. So.
And Dr. Mullen, would you like to maybe talk a little bit about our own experiences with simulated gastric fluid?
Yes, of course.
Your answer to that question.
Right. So we actually did do a follow-up to the Merrick study in which we examined simulated gastric fluid just for that very question. So we looked at it and explored it. So we did the experiment with just the ingestion of just the SGF, just simulated gastric fluid, and a THC-free form of CBD. And we didn't see major conversion at all, very little at best. So again, it was the addition of the surfactant or the SDS, the sodium dodecyl sulfate, that actually caused the conversion or the more of the conversion. So again, it would basically require someone to ingest maybe a CBD type based food with a bar of soap, maybe, to result in potentially getting major conversion. So I think that we could probably say, I think it's safe to say that that's not a major concern. Wouldn't you agree, Dr. Winokur?
I would agree. Yeah.
So unless you just want to eat a bar of soap with it, I think you would be okay.
Another question about the acidic foods study was, how were the spike samples stored? Room temperature, refrigerated?
So they were stored at room temperature. We did make sure that the room was monitored for humidity. So it was still controlled, but it was still at room temperature.
Okay, and then another question, with respect to labeling issues and consumer safety, are there any industry groups that provide third-party testing of CBD products and provide a seal or certification as to accuracy of the labeling?
Also a very good question. So there are some places that some types of businesses or laboratories that will give items that seal of authenticity. One such is a laboratory that we actually used for reference testing, which is, I think it's ACS. They do those quality checks. But I think that, again, they may perform the quality check, and just depending on that, which is what our study was really looking at, they wouldn't have known that isomerization would have occurred. So I think that that's really important to note. So I would say that they're doing a great job in doing that initial monitoring on the front end, but that's something that's unknown.
Okay, and then going back to the SGF, why did you choose to test with the addition of SDS?
So we initially ran the test. I think we were really interested in seeing if, this nano-formulated form of THC-free form of CBD would be able to actually cause the isomerization with the gastric fluid or the gastric acid that was present. So we did that study initially without any SDS or any surfactants or any of that nature. And we got results back from that, and we didn't really see any major differences. So we thought to go ahead and add the SDS to see if it would cause the isomerization or the conversion. And bingo, it worked. So that's why we went ahead and did the addition there.
So we have a question about adverse effects that come from CBD ingestion. Have any insight there?
So there are some reports that have been released recently that talk about some of the adverse effects of using CBD. So I know that there was speculation that it could cause male reproductive issues, some other intestinal issues are some of the other things that were noted. And a lot of that has just been released recently. Since there has been that proliferation of products, I think the scientific community is finally able to kind of like sink into this and actually do more exploration. And we are noticing that there are some adverse effects of CBD. So it's not the wonder or catch-all that that has been media publicized as well as it has been. So there are some adverse effects that are listed, and I'm sure there'll probably be more as we continue to do more research.
Then I'm not entirely sure what this question is getting at, but was pH versus conversion evaluated? So I'm assuming that what they're asking, Dr. Mullen, is was a neutral pH a control included in the study? I think that's what they're getting at.
Yes, so we did ensure so we started with we took the pH of all items, all of the food and beverage products that we used for that particular study, and monitored that pH as the time interval of the study went on, and no major changes were noted. If that's the way you're phrasing that question.
All right, so here's an interesting one, and I don't think we've talked about this before, but this commenter wanted to talk about the fact that the Farm Bill specifically states that the 0.3% limit is on a dry weight basis, right? So their question is, when you tested products are versus over or under labeling, how did you get it on a dry weight basis for things that are liquids?
So trying to get my bearings on how to. So we
we did it. I mean, the short answer is we did it. And when we've seen these evaluated, liquids, oils, tinctures, et cetera, evaluated, they're just evaluating on the 0.3%. And not on a dry weight basis. And I think that the dry weight basis is really applied to the plant as in differentiating hemp from marijuana. Right. But it has been largely adopted to mean in any final product.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Ooh, here's an interesting one. I've seen bath bombs advertised as containing CBD as well as SDS/SLS.
This is a soap. Okay.
Yeah. Have looked into a potential conversion of CBD to THC in these products. And I think an additional, a good addition to this, Dr. Mullen, we don't have the results of that out yet, but go ahead and answer this one. And I can comment a little bit about what we're doing study-wise on topical products.
Yeah. We there again, that topical study did take a look at different products. I'm not 100% certain on the addition of the SDS. That's really interesting. So we have not given research to that particular topic, but I do think that's something interesting to note. I mean, just depending on what the concentration of the CBD was, in addition with the SDS, will really tell the tale. But I think that's something really important and interesting to look at.
Yeah. And just as an add-on to that, the whole reason that we did those evaluation of those topical products is to actually do a clinical dosing study with the topical products.
Right.
That study is recently completed, and we'll be publishing results soon, but that will also be looking at absorption of CBD and any THC that happened to be also in the product through the topical route. So, and so this next question is really more added onto that, but the person is asking, or they're saying that they've done studies with low numbers of subjects who've used CBD lotions only, and that they tested positive for THC. And can you offer any conclusions as to why? Is this conversion or just absorption of or accumulation of THC that might be present in the lotions at less than 0.3%?
I think the first question I would love to ask that commenter would be like, was a test done to see if the person had ingested any THC initially, or was there a baseline done to determine THC positivity for that particular participant in that study? That would be the first question I would have. I think thinking about it, I mean, it just depending on what the concentration of CBD was listed first, exploring that could also be, really something that would need to be, reviewed and focused on. I mean, it could potentially be accumulation, just depending on how often and regularly that person is using that particular product that has CBD in it. I mean, there's a lot of potential, responses to that particular question. It could be the conversion, but I think, once that, maybe not as much, but I mean, it just really, it's an open-ended question. I don't know, Dr. Winokur, would you have some more insight?
It would depend on the pH of the lotion as well, right? Yeah. Yeah. This is all a new frontier, and we're all finding out as we go along. Okay. All right. So, was there a correlation between the pH of the items and the percentage of CBD to THC conversion? And I'm not. I don't know which one this one was about. Was it about the foods that were not the foods that we added CBD to, but the products that we bought and analyzed the CBD? Well, we couldn't tell if it was converted, right?
Right. Yeah. So right, we didn't.
We didn't know if it was there in the first place or converted because of the acid. I would answer it to the one where we added known THC-free CBD to the acidic foods. I think is the easiest answer. So of the items that we saw conversion in, the sports drink and the lemonade, was there any differences in the pH of those two?
No, none noted. So, and again, we did check it at each one of those time intervals, and there was no variance with it. And we did an initial analysis of the pH, and there was no difference.
Oops. Okay. All right, so our next one, are there any upgrades to the process that are being put forth? Like, how are these processes inputted internationally? Like, as in labeling?
I think that, okay. I think, a lot of these studies, like these initial studies will, potentially be forewarnings, or like will serve as the basis to what regulatory aspects will be given. So I think, with the mention of, CBD potentially having some of those adverse effects, I think that will cause more attention to be focused on labeling and ensuring that labeling accuracy is present in way for public safety. Internationally, I don't know. That's a really good question. I think that that internationally there has been different regulatory aspects that has been utilized for regulatory, like for different products that actually contain these items. I think it's a little bit different, but I don't know.
I think it's important to note that the FDA has put some of these companies that are adding CBD products to CBD tinctures and whatever to food to have put them on warning that is not allowed under current U.S. law. And because Epidiolex, which is CBD, is a prescription product, and you are not allowed to put any prescription products in as an additive in food. And so, we're still navigating all of this. That's where we are.
Yeah.
All right. And then the next one this is interesting. And all right. So has anyone discussed the side effect with both animal and human studies of elevated eye pressure? In relation to CBD use.
I have not seen reference material or literature, scientific literature on that particular topic, but that is definitely an interesting one to note. So possibly. I don't know, Dr. Winokur?
No, I don't. I'm not familiar with this literature. Yeah.
Yeah. That's an interesting concept. So I mean, like, I guess like for like ocular pressure, trying to.
We'll have to go look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something really interesting.
Okay. So the next question is, were there any cases in your study where CBD did not convert to THC?
Well, there was minimal convert. So I'm assuming that question is in line with the CBD acidic food study. So there was conversion with all of the acids used. So with the acetic and the phosphoric and the citric, there just wasn't a lot, which doesn't necessarily mean that those particular acids don't cause the conversion. I just think that it was probably the level or the amount of acid that was present in the product that we potentially used, or the product that we actually used. But yeah, we did see minimal conversion for all of those acid containing, but just not huge amounts.
Yeah, great. So here is something that we looked at, and a really good question. Any plans to look into heat or temperature as a conversion factor, like adding CBD to coffee or using it in baking?
Right, great question. So we actually did, a sleeve of our research for the acidic foods and the beverages was to explore heat as an option. And the results there were minimal. So we didn't see any significant increase in THC isomerization with the introduction of heat. So what we did was kind of look at it from multiple perspectives. So we did an experiment where we did cooking with the CBD product, or we did something that was a simulation of like a hot temperature in a car or something like that. And those results did not yield significant isomerization or conversion to CBD to THC.
Right. It didn't enhance it at all.
No. So you get the same effect if it's room temperature or if it was cooked.
This is an interesting comment. So this person commented, for a while when I worked in a lab here in Ontario, we looked at some pharmaceutical drugs in sewage effluents. I see that some folks have been monitoring illicit drugs in effluents like cocaine, et cetera. And I wonder if the sewage treatment process, treating with chlorine, for example, would convert CBD to THC, increasing the amount of effluents that are positive for THC.
Wow. Interesting question. Interesting thought. That's not something that we have yet to explore, but I think that's really interesting to know. I know that with sewage studies and like sewage water treatment studies and all those particular things, I know that that's something to monitor. So potentially, Dr. Wintergreen?
Yeah, well, it's true. I think one of the things that, and we didn't go over it here in any of the work that you presented today, but we've also done pulse testing studies looking at CBD presence in workplace drug testing samples, and it's not as common as THC. So even though there's tons and tons of people, products out there, and it seems to feel like everybody's using CBD, we're not really seeing it that much in the workplace drug testing sample. So
yeah.
Great. All right. Well, we're 2 minutes till, and I think that the discussion and the questions have dropped off, and I would just like to thank everybody for joining us today, and thank Dr. Mullen for the very interesting presentation, and we'll leave it at that.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it, and I hope the rest of the webinar series goes well. So can't wait for the rest of it.
Before you leave today's webinar, I'd like to draw your attention to our feedback form. It takes less than 5 minutes to complete and can be accessed via the checkbox icon directly above the chat. Your honest feedback is invaluable as we continually search for ways to improve and provide the best experience possible. Lastly, across the top of the live stream window are links to our social media profiles, including Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. There is also a link to the FTCOE website, the Just Science podcast, and the FTCOE newsletter registration. Like, follow, or subscribe to stay up to date with everything the FTCOE is doing in support of the forensic community. Thank you again for attending, and we hope everyone has a great day.